All right, we're recording. So what we're going to do today is go through your assignment that's coming up. Let me get the course up first. Go. And it's due. Your assignment is actually due at the end of week 6, but I thought we might
Uh-huh.
as well look at it early. That way you've got plenty of time to work on it. Go into modules down here. So we're in week 5 right now, but the assignment is due here by August the 12th. But this gives you a good head start. You can start working on it now, and then if you have questions, post them to the questions to the instructor, and we can go over them there as well. But it's a big assignment, and so we want to give you as much time as possible to work on it. So I'm going to open up the assignment and we're going to just sort of walk through it, and we'll be, looking back and forth at our textbook and this assignment and the course while we're doing it. Okay. So here it is, the paper. It's a formal paper. It's worth 125 points, which is 12.5% of your grade. So it's good to get a start in it early. And it's of course all about a pathophysiology of a disease process. So remember way back in the beginning when you did the Eagle Gate Cafe, and some students put in there, I'd really like to know more about, and they talked about a specific disease or some kind of problem in the body. And if it's not a clinical model, that'd be a great one to do if you haven't learned enough about it. Or else you can choose anything you want as long as it's not a clinical model. And the reason for that is those clinical models in your book, if you've noticed, they tell you everything that's asked on this paper. So it wouldn't be a very good learning experience if you were just like, going to the book and then writing it down and going to the book and writing it down. You really want to find out more and add to your body of knowledge as a nurse. So let's go beyond those. And if we get the book over here, I'm going to bring the book over. Okay. Oh, where'd it go? Where'd my book go? Well, this is working well. There. Should be able to see the book. There's a kidney hanging out here.
Yes.
Well, I love these ebooks because you don't have to go look everywhere for something. You can just type it up here in the search and find it. So say you're thinking about it and you want to do hypertension, high blood pressure. I really want to know more about that. My mom has it and I want to know more about hypertension. So you can just type it in here and it tells you everywhere in the book that you can find hypertension. And so then what I do is I click down here to the very end and I try to find out exactly where in the book you find most about it. And it looks like most of the hypertension is around 412. There's quite a bit. I guess that's the most of it, about 412. So let's go and try to find that in here. Because all I'm doing is to find out, is it a clinical model or is it something I can do for my paper? So here's all about hypertension. Look a little bit more here. There's shock. Oh, guess what? Hypertension is a clinical model. So in chapter 16, it's going to spell it all out. It's got the pathophysiology and everything. So hypertension, I will not be able to do for my paper. So I'll have to pick something else. Do you have a disease in mind that you're thinking about doing?
Um, not not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I just got a phone call from my brother, and he's having surgery tomorrow for appendicitis. So let's look for appendicitis. Because I really want to know more about that because, as the family nurse, they're going to be calling and asking me all about appendicitis. So
Uh-huh.
it's only it's got four pages of it. So let's see where the most of appendicitis is. 473 and 474 are the big ones. So here's 473. So there's talking about appendicitis. Let's scoop around up here. Okay, I'm not in the clinical models yet. 473 and 474 has got pictures, information. Now I'm getting into the appendicitis, or into the clinical models, and my appendicitis is not one of them. So I could do appendicitis for my paper and study it up and know all about quite a bit of it for my brother to answer questions for the family. So that's how you can find out if the one you want to do is a clinical model. Because you want this to be a good learning experience, not just like copying stuff from the book or just reading the book and posting it, okay? The only other ones besides the clinical models that you cannot do is diabetes. And the reason for that is the whole last chapter of our book is diabetes. I mean, the whole chapter. So that's not one you want to do either. So pick something else. If you have any questions about what you're picking and you're not sure if it's a clinical model and you've looked in the book and you really can't tell, just give me a call, shoot me an email, a text, or post something in the questions for the instructor, and I'll help you look it up to find out. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's how you decide if it is a clinical model. All right, so now let's go back to our assignment. Here it is. So that's basically the first part of there. It's just the biggest thing is deciding what disease process you want to work on. And this assignment is really going to cover every one of your course outcomes. So we're going to start, we'll walk through here, and then we'll look at our rubric, okay? So you're going to write a formal paper. This paper is going to have a title page and a reference page, and those need to be in APA 6th edition format. Now, if you're not familiar, I mean, I know you've had NUR 125 and you've had English, but if you need to go and check on those things to see how to do a reference page or title page, just go back to your modules, and there's this section here called Course Tools, and it gives you APA template and sample information. And if you were in the physical therapy assistant program, you would use the AMA information, but if you're in nursing, which you are, you'll use the APA template. And you go in here, and here's a sample paper. Look at that. Drops down the bottom. Okay. Here. Okay, so there's a sample paper, and it's got the how to do it. This is the title page. Now, some teachers might want more on your title page, so you want to ask your instructor, but if you're in my class, which everybody is, except for those that have Muhammad. So I have 4 sections of this class, and he has the 1. If you're in Muhammad, just check with him to see what else you need to put on your title page. For me, this is perfect. You'll start with your running head, and there's some oddities of APA, but we just go with it. You write the word running head up there with a colon, and then a short part of your title goes up there, and then it is in all caps. So here it's called Creating Success APA Sample. They put Creating Success 1, but to make life easy, you could just put the name of your disease process. So if I'm doing appendicitis, the title of my paper is appendicitis. And I'll say running head, colon, and in all caps, appendicitis. Nice and easy. Every page has the page number at the top in this corner. You start with 1 and then just number the rest of the pages. This is the title of your paper. Mine's appendicitis. Your name. This is I'm a student paper, so you'll put your name here. You can put the name of your college. And then on the last line here, you can put the name of your course. So this would be BIO260 pathophysiology. And some instructors will ask you to put a date on here. So whenever you want to make sure you're getting everything they want you on your title page, just ask them. Mine, this is fine. So then in this sample, it really helps because our assignment that we're going to do has got all these little sections on the rubric. And to make sure you've got them covered, you can make each one of those one of the sections of your paper. So when we get to it, you'll see it'll say introduction. Make this introduction up here. And then there'll be one about the pathophysiology. You write pathophysiology. So whatever each of those sections on the rubric are, so helpful for your instructor to use those as like subheadings, because then we can say, okay, this is where she's talking about that part of the paper. I can go right to it, see that you've done it, give you the points. If it's just one big long paper with no subheading, it's really hard for your faculty to go through here and try to find where you talked about each section of the paper in order to get the points. So make it easy for them, easy for you, see that you've done it all, and make your subheading. Then you're going to do your reference page, and your reference page starts with the references. The R is capitalized, the rest of it's lowercase, it's not bold or anything, and it's centered. Then you're going to put in your references that you use. You list them in alphabetical order. Couldn't think of the name. I'm thinking APA. It's alphabetical order. And if you have more than one author, don't alphabetize the authors, because what this is this guy here, Hacker, he was like the lead author and Jones was the supporting author. The same thing with McInnes and McElroy here. So if he's the lead author and this one's the secondary author, if you was to swap these, this person would be upset because he wants to stay lead. So because there's two, it says Hacker and Jones, and so it's going to be an H in the alphabetized. Okay, alphabetical order by the name. And hanging indent is used, and what that means is the first line is all the way flush to the margin, and any subsequent lines that have to go with that reference are indented. So flush and then indented, flush and then indented. Do you have any questions about the format of the paper or anything?
No.
No? Okay. You're so quiet. All right, so we looked at that. And then there's all kinds of samples. If you use a website, now you can't use Wikipedia, you've got to use scholarly sites. But if you find a really great site, like maybe the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and you want to use that one, that's great. But you have to have the full reference. You can't just put the website down. And for help with that, if you look at these videos in here, it really walks you through that. And even after the videos, if you have any questions, shoot me an email or put something in the questions to the instructor, and I'll help you figure it out, okay? And usually if you put it in the questions to the instructor, everybody else learns too. So it's helpful for you, helpful for them. All right, so all this is sitting in your modules. And so, make use of it. And then we'll go back to our assignment now that we know how to set those up. Okay, so we've chosen our disease process. It's not a clinical model, and we know how to do our APA. We've got our title page whipped out. We're going to do our research to find what we need and make our reference page. I always make the reference page first, because if you make the reference page first, you know exactly how to cite it. So if I was going to use the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and I found an article on there, but it didn't have an author because it's just from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, then they're my author. And so I'll put Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and then if there's a date on the website, I use that. Otherwise, I'll have in parentheses ND, N period, D period for no date. Then I'll have the name of the article, and then I'll say retrieved from, and I'll put the CDC's website. So I've already got my reference. When I'm ready to cite it in my paper, all I have to do is go down there and look and say, okay, it's the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, comma, and the date, and put that in parentheses. I've got my reference. It matches exactly with my citation now, and I'm good to go. So, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is quite long, and we like to abbreviate it CDC. That's okay, but when the first time it shows up in your paper and in your reference and the first time in your citation, you need to have it spelled out, and after that you can put CDC. Okay? So we're going to get into now, we've got our reference page all thought out, we know what our references are in our citations. We'll get into the body of the paper. So the whole paper, minus that reference page and minus that title page, needs to be 3 to 5 pages long. And if you're answering everything on that rubric, it will be that long, so no problem. But just know that you can't count your title page and your reference page in those pages. You have to have the body has to be 3 to 5. So here we are again. We've chose a disease process that you want to learn more about. It can't be a clinical model, and it can't be diabetes because that's the whole last chapter. And so we know that, and you've picked out something. I've chose appendicitis. So I'm ready to write. I have gone out and found lots of information on appendicitis, and I'm ready to go. First part is going to be the introduction. So you remember how that sample paper had the little, at the top, what do you call those? Subheadings? My first subheading is going to be introduction. So I'll put that up there. And under that subheading, I'm going to identify the disease process and explain why I chose that disease process. So I'm going to say, I chose appendicitis because I just heard that my brother is having surgery for appendicitis tomorrow. I want to know more about that so that I can be of assistance to my family when they have questions. So whatever your disease is and why you chose it, just go ahead and write that in your introduction. Then you're going to, more of your introduction will be to identify the population at risk for this disease process. I need to find out who's more at risk for having an appendicitis. Is there an age group? Is it people over 50? Is it men more than women? Is it a specific ethnic group more than others? And some of these disease processes, you're going to read about it and they won't have anything. They will say it's, the general public gets this. It's not specific to any age or gender or ethnicity. And if that's the case, rather than just leaving it blank and not saying, you've got to say, I researched this and there's no specific age, gender, or ethnicity that gets this. Could be anybody. Or you may find out men get it more than women, but there's no ethnic group involved. If you don't say those things on your paper in your introduction, your teacher is not going to know that you looked that up, and you won't get the points. So make sure if it's asked for that you address it. Okay? So there's our introduction, and we're going to go down here now to the next thing, and this is where we discuss the disease process using terminology relevant to pathophysiology. And that makes sense because we're in a pathophysiology class, so we're going to use, that kind of speaking. Not lay terms, but we'll talk about morbidity and mortality and different things. So use those terms that we studied. You're going to describe the disease process. You're going to do so from the cellular, tissue, organ, or organ system levels. Now, depending on what you choose, you may not have a cellular part, or you may not have a tissue. Right now, I'm thinking about doing appendicitis, so I will be at the organ level. And if there are surrounding tissues involved, I can bring that up. If I chose like atrial fibrillation, I would have more on the cellular level because it's going to be electrically conducted through the heart, and I'll talk about the specific cells involved, and I'll talk about the different tissues, the muscle tissue of the heart, and the organ is the heart, and then the circulatory system would make my organ system. So look, depending on your chosen disease process, talk to me about everything involved in that. What is going on in the body from all these perspectives? And you'll start out with normal structure and function. So cells normally do this or look like this, or the organ normally does this, and this is what's normal in the body. And because of this disease, this is what's going on now in the body. And you'll talk about that. So describe if you have cancer, if you're going to do cancer, there you're going to talk about cellular proliferation or tumor types. And we just studied the tumor types, so make sure you bring all that in as far as which one of the tumor types you're having there. You'd only do this if you're doing cancer. On top of all these other ones, you would do this. If you're not doing a cancer, then everything else would be here except for the tumor types. Okay? So once you've got that, now this is going to be a big part of your paper because we're talking about the pathophysiology here, normal structure and function, and what has gone bad, the pathology. Next item or subheading you might want to talk about now is the clinical manifestation. So I would just make that a subheading, clinical manifestation. And we've practiced that in our discussion questions. So those are the signs and symptoms of what the disease process is. Like for the appendicitis, my brother Bill has got a fever. He's got lower flank pain. He's tender in the area. It was so severe he went into the ER. They did the tests on him. He's got going to have his appendix out. But whatever your disease is, what do you expect a patient to look like? What are they going to say is wrong with them? What's the clinical manifestation? Next part is how are we going to diagnose it? So, are they going to do a CT scan? Are they going to do a physical assessment? Are they going to do an X-ray? Do they need to draw blood? What is it that we have to do to diagnose that disease process? And as we just studied with schizophrenia, there's no real definitive test, but we do it by assessment, and there's a lot of ruling out. So if there are no specific diagnostic tests, you need to say that and then tell us how are you going to diagnose it, because we're not going to give anybody a diagnosis of a disease process unless we can decide it, even if it means ruling out other disease processes and simply seeing the signs and symptoms that the patient is expressing. So that's going to be this section. So call it diagnostics. Then here we have define the basic approach to treatment based on current medical science and clinical practice. So what are we going to do to help this person feel better? Does it require surgery? Is it medication? Is it physical therapy? What is it that's going to treat this disease or just process? And you could call that section treatment if you want to. This one here is pain phenomena, and so its subtitle could be pain. Now we know that not every disease process has pain. And I had a dog that had cardiomegaly so bad that I lost him, but he never showed signs and symptoms of pain. So I asked the doctor, I said, well, sometimes we don't see any pain in it. So when you research your disease process, if there is no pain, you need to say it. Because if you just leave it blank and don't talk about it, when it comes to number 9 on the rubric below, the teacher's going to give you a 0 because they don't see anything. You didn't put anything down. So make sure you have your subtitle pain or pain phenomena, if you want to call it, and talk about it. With this disease process, there is no pain, and therefore there is no pain management. Or with this disease process, you will get, flank pain and tenderness, and this is the treatment we give for it, either if they're getting the medications or the surgery is going to cure it or whatever the deal is. How are we going to manage the pain? Of course, with other diseases, there's going to be severe pain. And with the atrial fib, if they start having cardiac pain, or with the cancers, they're going to have pain. So there might be more to talk about here, but some diseases you won't see pain, but we need to hear that from you in your paper. Next item on here is describe the healing or recovery process of those organs and tissues. So as we've been reading, some of the tissues actually regenerate themselves and recover. When we talked about the patient that had the cancer and smoking, and we did talk about if a person had quit smoking, would their lung tissue recover? And we discussed the different recovery periods and how it won't recover completely, but partially. So if your disease process is treated, talk about, will the tissue recover? Will it regenerate? what's going to happen with this patient following treatment. Now, with an appendicitis, they're going to remove my brother's appendix. So that appendix is not going to regenerate itself or heal. It's going to be removed. But the tissues that are being affected by this leaking appendix and the problems will recover. So I'll be talking about that in my paper. So make sure you put that in there. Now, if you read and they say, well, there's no recovery, go to surgery and it's gone, don't leave number 10 blank. You've got to talk about it. Otherwise, you end up missing your points on the rubric. And then you'll have the last subheading would be conclusion. And in your conclusion, just summarize your key points that you made in the paper. It doesn't have to be a long thing, maybe a paragraph, just your summary. And then you're going to have supported your paper with at least 2 scholarly resources. You might have more. Make sure they are scholarly. You've been through 125, so you know what you can and cannot use. And then, of course, correct format. For nurses, it's going to be APA 6th edition. If you're in the physical therapy assistant program, you'll use American Medical, so AMA. Now let's look at our rubric here. And basically, the rubric is going to tell you the same thing we just went through. But if you're missing pieces of this, it's going to tell you what the breakdown of the points are. And if, I can't get it to go all the way over, but if you don't have it at all, if you do like I remember I said, if there's no pain, you better say there's a reason why there's no pain and there's no pain. If you just leave it blank, they're going to end up giving you a 0. So if you're missing parts to your sections, it lowers your points. You don't want to miss points, so walk through it, have your subheadings under introduction, make sure you have all these things, the disease, why you chose it, identify populations at risk, age, gender, ethnicity. If there is none, you're going to talk about it. Number 2, you come down, talk about the disease in pathophysiological terms, talk about it from cellular, tissue, organ system levels, talk about normal structure and function, and now what's changed. And if it's a cancer, you're going to talk about the cellular proliferation or tumor. So under each heading, there's several things to include. And if you start leaving parts out, that's when your points go down. So y'all want full points, and trust me, we want to give you full points. So just make your subheading and then walk through and make sure you covered everything, okay? And as you come down, you're going to talk about the clinical manifestations, signs and symptoms, what's going on, the approach to diagnostics, whether or not a test was done, whether it's an assessment or whatever is done, you need to talk about it. Basic approach to treatment, are we going to do surgery, medicines, therapies, what is the treatment? If there's no treatment, the patient's going to pass away, I'm sure you're going to be doing palliative care or something, so put that in. Pain phenomena, if there is pain, where is the pain, what's the pain like, and how are you going to treat the pain, what's the pain management. If there's absolutely no pain, you need to describe why there is no pain with this, and that there wouldn't be pain management because there is no pain. Then come down, the healing process, are they going to regenerate, how's the patient going to recover, what's it going to be like when he's recovered, explain it, why or why not. And then your conclusion, about a paragraph, key points. Paper's 3 to 5 pages, doesn't include that title or reference page we talked about, so the whole body is 3 to 5 pages. Minimum 2 scholarly resources, everything is in the correct format, and then rules of grammar, spelling, word usage, all that. Run a spell check on it and a grammar check. Just make sure everything is good. Read it to yourself, or if you have, my poor husband, when I was in nursing school, he had to read everything because I get too close to it, and then I'm reading it thinking it's fine, and I'm missing words. So have somebody else, if you can, read your paper for you and just, cue you in if you spelled something wrong or didn't put the comma in the right place or didn't capitalize something. Okay, we have a question here coming on the chat. It says, question about the introduction. Some teachers want the heading introduction for the introduction, others do not. I say put it up there because I would make it easy. I'm the teacher and I'm going to see here and I'm saying, okay, did you do an introduction? If you've got the word introduction up there, I'm happy as a clam because I can see your, there it is. I'm going to look right at it and I'm going to look in there and see if I can find the disease process, why you chose it, and did you identify populations at risk. So for me, and I'm teaching 4th section of it, and I know Muhammad is the same way, so that covers all of us in pathophysiology. You can use the word introduction. So same thing with all of these. Choose that so that we can focus on it. This is the introduction. This is the pathophysiology. This is clinical manifestations. This one is diagnostics or diagnosis. This one is treatment. Here's pain or pain phenomena. This is the healing process. That's my conclusion. There's all the sections right there. And if I put something in all those sections and I'm putting everything I'm supposed to in them, I know I'm going to get good points. Good question. All right. I think that's the only question so far. You're very welcome. Okay, so we've kind of looked through the paper. I made a couple notes to make sure I talked to you about a couple things. Oh, the 80-20 rule. So 80% or more, if not 100%, of your paper needs to be in your own words. So read all about everything, and then you're going to cite where you learned the stuff, but you don't have to just type it out of the book or the articles and stick it in there and make giant quotes, because think about it as the way I'm thinking about it. I want to know about appendicitis because my brother's having surgery tomorrow for appendicitis. And I always have 3 calls from my family. I have a huge family. And they all want information about appendicitis and how Bill's going to recover and how they find out and all this stuff. So I'm going to talk to them in my own words from what I learned from doing my research. I'm not going to read to them from the articles and give them quotes. They would think I don't know what I'm talking about. Instead, I'm going to learn as much as I can about it, and I'm going to talk to them about it. So that's how your papers and your discussion posts and everything should be. It should show that you know the topic based on your research, not that some other author knows about it. So, and sometimes there's just the most brilliant quote in the whole world, and you just have to use it. Well, if it's small enough and it's not going to be throw me into, less than 80% is my words, then maybe I'd use that quote. If you use a quote, you've got it in quotation marks, you've got the reference there, and you're including the page or the paragraph number from your reference, okay? Put that in your citation. Otherwise, 80% or more has to be in your own words to get full credit. We talked about spelling out abbreviations the first time you use them, and then you can use abbreviations in your paper. If you have the group author, well, like we talked about the CDC, it'd be a group author. So that would come first on my reference, followed by the date, and that's what I would use. Any questions with APA? Don't be shy. Post them in the questions to the instructor, and we'll help you figure out how to cite and reference them. Because if your teacher helps you figure out the citation and the reference, and you use that, I don't think they can really count that off. So ask for help if you need it. Otherwise, you've got all that stuff in modules, the samples, you've got videos, and you have the APA style in the Pages tab. And I like the APA style too, because I can go in there and just type in what I'm looking for, and it'll bring up samples for me. So here's the videos, and there's the APA. Where's the APA styles? Where are you? Okay, did they move it? Oh, here it is right here. So under APA Writing Help, it's just small. APA website, you can click on that and it takes you straight in, and this comes right from the American Psychological Association, and you can look for things in there. So if you're going to cite a website, you can't just put in the URL. You need to put in all the information. You can just go up here and look for citing websites or whatever you're looking for. Okay. I think that's all I have. Kind of went over the assignment and the other things to talk about. Does anybody have any questions at all? You're both on mute.
I don't have any questions for now.
You don't have any questions? Okay, well, if you come up with something, you could always shoot me a text or an email or put something in the questions to the instructor and we'll go over it. I recorded this, so I'll change it into a link. Put that in there. And so if you want to hear it again, you can listen to it again, or your classmates. You're the only two out of the 120 students we have, so I wished I had a prize for you. But instead, you can just say, well, I was there. Well, thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I can't wait to read what you've written about.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.